It's Reiki, but not as you know it.
Sorry, Linda, it feels like a week since I've been. I hope you didn't get too bored.
No, not at all. I just sat back here and thought about, I told you that I was heading down the mountain path, and I thought about how oftentimes life will present us challenges, and how many times do we really understand how to handle them? Do we try to incorporate everything we know to date to be able to navigate? Or do we actually go back to default and just go back the way we came and get stuck in that loop of stagnation and being in a box and not really expanding? So with that, is that my tipple?
It is, yes, it's another burly hunk or whatever it's called.
It's something on the rocks.
Burly man on the rocks. There you go.
Oh. You know, do they really use burrs? Like, how do they stick all that on their body? Never mind, that's a story for another day.
I don't know, but those burrs do look incredibly prickly.
Yeah, they are. They are. So, but not in this special drink.
Strange and unusual.
It's Cornelia. Thank you, Cornelia.
I've got a drama banana, which apparently is the opposite of a banana drama and counteracts the effects of a banana.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes.
That seems, and you got that from Cornelia, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah, see, she knows. She knows what to talk about.
She does. And apparently this one turns a drama into a banana. And who doesn't laugh at a banana? Because they are very funny fruit. Are they a fruit?
Yeah, they have seeds. Yes, they are fruit.
Not a droop.
Oh, you can tell we've been here for a long time.
Long time. But yes, whilst I was at the bar with Cornelia, I was reflecting on our journey through the facets of Ki and thinking, well, there's so much more to explore here.
I know. I'm glad you decided not to go and hang out here. They're probably going to start thinking we are moving in soon.
Squatters.
Oh my God. Oh.
Which, would happen if you've been here a long time. You got to go sometime.
I knew that's where you were going with that. I just knew.
No, I can't resist.
No, I knew. That's why I was like, oh, I know where he's going with this. Oh no.
Oh dear, I better get this drama banana down me. You'll be bringing out the cattle prod and making me dance.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yes, you say that with a little bit too much gusto.
I'm sorry, I can't hide. I'll have to cover my face so you don't see that look. Oh, goodness gracious.
So our next facet couple, um, first of all, we have Denki. Denki is the force of thunder,
Yes.
and it is the fundamental dynamic of the relationships that are formed between these differently defined individuals in the physical world. So this could be the relationship between two people, maybe in a family unit, maybe in a romantic couple, maybe in a community, maybe a conflicting relationship, or it could be a relationship with something. So, a relationship with material possessions, a relationship with food, with money, with time. So, the relationships that we have interpersonally between each other and also with the world around us, in all of the physical things within that world, these are all driven by Denki, and the dynamics created are all Denki based.
Yes.
Denki has an equal mix of intelligence and physicality. So when we start with Keki, which is purely physical, no intelligence, and as we go through the facets, they lose physicality but gain intelligence. And Denki is an equal mix of physicality and intelligence. The experience for me of Denki is I feel it as the most physical form of Ki. Whenever in treatment I have worked with Denki, it is always the most impactful.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary how physically and sensory it is.
Yes. Yes. I really love the Key of Thunder as well. My experience with it is very much the warrior. So it's interesting that you say it's a mix of the two, the physical and the intelligent, or the cognitive. And to me, that's the warrior. It's not kill, crush, destroy. It's the warrior that can strategize, the warrior that knows when to act, how much force to put into that action, but not in a destructive way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Here is you start to see how we begin with these disparate lumps of physicality that have no sentience or no knowledge of oneself. They just are. They're just like lumps, basically, physical lumps. And then you start to sort of progress into physical lumps that have a form of intelligence. And this is very much centered upon desire, physical need, want to consume, mixed with a slightly more intelligent knowing that perhaps having that last bit of cake is going to be a mistake. So there is this sense of desire and abstinence, of knowing one's limits. And so there is a basic intelligence there that is governing this physical matter.
Yeah.
By the time we get to Denki, we are getting into the area of common sense. But
Discernment. Yeah.
Discernment. Yeah. And you know how some people are just worldly wise? They're never going to be academics, they're not scholarly, but they just know. They just know what life is and how to navigate it in a really natural and smooth way.
Yeah.
And that's really where Denki is in terms of its balance between physicality and intelligence. The intelligence of Denki is based on its physiology, on its physicality. And so therefore these two perfectly balanced sides of the same coin create this worldly wise form of intelligence.
Yeah. I think it's an important facet for me in my practice. A high percentage of my interactions are remote. And I find Denki's right there. And I need to honor that part of who I am, because we are all these facets, and it's a powerful force of balance and discernment. In the beginning, when I first started practicing remotely, it was challenging. How do you do that? How do you I remember asking you that. It's like, don't worry, We're doing it right now. It's the practice of that. It's the practice of expanding your awareness with all the keys, obviously. Keys. Oh my God. I'm not talking about keys, locks. I'm talking about the facets. My goodness. Where did I just go?
You're back in the citadel. That's what it is.
I think that's where I was. My goodness, I just shocked myself. Oh my goodness. But it's just back to the awareness of utilizing the facets in a way that create this forward momentum.
Yes.
Regardless of what you do in your life. I'm talking about being a practitioner and a teacher, but this is applicable to anything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And it's extraordinary in terms of the experience of Denki, in as much as we live our lives in terms of sensory experience. So our senses are bringing everything in. And the way that we interpret the world around us is very much in line with our sensory experience and the various biases that we have in terms of those sensory experiences. So we will pay more attention to one sense than the other. And we will even shut down sensory input if it sort of does not necessarily serve us. So if we think about pain, for example, and pain is an extraordinary experience because pain is there to tell us something is not good.
Right.
We have an injury, we have some form of dis-ease, we have been sitting in one position too long, whatever it may be. We've got our hand in a flame, as you do. And pain is there to alert us to take immediate action.
Right.
It is telling us that something needs to happen to alleviate that pain. But then there is a point as well where pain does not serve us, where we are getting the pain experience and we might not be able to do anything about that. It may be some sort of damage that we can't fix, or it could be that something has gone a bit awry in the nervous system. Maybe it's some sort of chronic pain syndrome, for example. But there comes a point where the pain is just there. It deteriorates life and the experience of life. And the brain is remarkable because it can start to shut that out. And we can actually completely ignore the pain signals that are coming to our brain. An example of this is a very, very minute form of pain, which is an itch. And very often, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Linda, you get an itch on your back and you think, I've got to scratch that. So you either are very flexible, and if you do yoga, very often you can get your arms back there and work, or maybe you have a back scratcher, or you get somebody else to scratch your back for you.
Or you're like a bear and you just find, the right.
Or a tree, yes, yeah, and you do a little shimmy up against the tree. Like a bit of a samba. A samba in the salure. I'm sure they'd love it.
The battery just went off again.
And they'd be really good as well because they could give you aspirin.
That's right.
But the moment you start to scratch that itch, you suddenly become aware of how itchy your back is, and there's and they move, they migrate, and it's like there's one there and there's one there.
Yes.
And that's because suddenly you're paying attention to that particular area of your body, and you become aware of just how itchy you are. The amazing thing is, and it's something that I recommend people do, is that when we start to pay a real attention to the objects around us, maybe in terms of texture, of sensation, of temperature. So you hold something in your hand, say for example a wax candle, and you really go into the experience on your fingertips of that wax candle and how that feels, and what the temperature of that is, and how your fingers move along it, and you really start to open up and exercise that sensation, very often you also become aware of the pains in your fingers, the aches and the tension and the experience of your fingers that you have just completely shut out.
Right.
And it is a really interesting thing that when we begin to pay attention to the physicality around us, how suddenly we open up to the pain that is there, the tension, the things that are happening in our body that really we need to pay attention to in a lot of
Right.
cases, but just don't, just sort of blocked them out. And I've had a number of clients over the years who literally are in agony but don't know it. The way that they hold their body in certain positions just demonstrates the pain that they're in terms of muscle locks and spasms and knots, and
Yeah.
but they don't know it because they're not paying attention to that particular area of their body because it's so painful over such a long period of time. Their brain has learned to filter it out.
Right. Right.
And this is extraordinary how, when we begin to define and we are connected into Kuki and we're using this limitation and definition, how this leads us into Denki, which is having a knowing about your body and where your pain is and where your tension is and where dis-ease is and where you're holding it. Because when you can know that and you can use Kuki to define that, Denki has the intelligence to understand it in a different way.
Yes.
And that can be a way that heals,
Absolutely.
helps you transcend that pain, but in a real way, not in just a block it out, don't feel it.
Right. Right. And you know, you used pain as an example, but this is true of everything that
Mhm.
limits us.
Yeah.
You know, we think about blocking pain as a resolution,
Mhm.
but what if that pain is serving a purpose, which
Absolutely.
it usually is,
Yeah.
to make you aware? And when we shift and try to understand what is the underlying, what is the cause, not the effect,
Yeah.
when we understand that we have the ability to discern what the cause is and grow from it, you know, that's Denki.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting as well how we often define dis-ease around symptoms. So the
Yeah.
symptoms of something will often create the way that we define that particular disease or illness. So, for example, if you get a cold and you get snuffles and you're sneezing and you feel hot and you have a temperature, it's not actually the cold and the cold virus that's doing that. It's your body's reaction to it.
Right.
But we can follow the symptoms to get an idea of what the underlying disease is.
Mhm.
And we can take that a step further to even understand the particular profile of a person's disease, like what sorts of disease actually affects them. So is it their chest that they tend to have trouble with? Is it their digestive system? Is it their musculoskeletal system? We can build a profile symptomatically of that person to know what sorts of things they're susceptible to. And the thing with allopathic medicine is that it will look at those symptoms and treat based on those symptoms
Right.
by combating the symptoms
Right.
and look at treating one for one. It's really when we come to Denki in terms of the facets of Ki that we really begin to see the holism and holistic nature, in as much as this is my symptomatic profile. Now, how do I heal holistically, using the symptoms as clues to create all-round and all-encompassing healing
Right.
as a holistic human being?
Right. Right. Holism versus separateness.
Yeah, yeah. And holarchy versus hierarchy.
Right.
Allopathic medicine does have this incredible hierarchy of what is important and what isn't. What we tend to see in holarchy medicine, in as much as something that would be seen less important in allopathic medicine, is actually a precursor to something more serious. So if you can treat symptomatic profile in the early stages, it will prevent the more serious things from ever needing to happen.
Absolutely.
But in traditional allopathic medicine and hierarchical medicine, there is this sense of, oh, that's not important. So it's ignored until it gets more serious.
Right.
Come back to me when the pain stops you from doing something.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Which makes my head want to spin off. It's
Exactly. So our next facet of ki, companion to Denki, is the ki of magnetism, Jiki. And Jiki, I often describe it as the rhythm or drumbeat to life.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our relationships, the way that we relate to each other, has this sense of us stepping in time or stepping out of time. So when we are walking to the beat in time and together and synchronized, we have harmonious Jiki. And if we are stepping out of time, we very, very quickly develop chaotic Jiki.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jiki is this overarching rhythm to which the perfect life, the perfect community, society, etc., exists. But our movements within that rhythm or out of that rhythm dictate how that experience is actually had.
Right.
And it is very interesting how we can have people who work very harmoniously and people who are very contrary. So if they know that there is a rhythm, they will purposefully step outside that rhythm to test it, to change it, to see what happens, or even to disrupt the harmony of others. And it can be done in either way. It can create an evolution or it can create disruption.
Right. Right.
And it can create disruption that is evolution.
I was just going to say, I think I might fit into another category.
Yes. And that's the thing. Walking to the beat of a different drum is what creates diversity.
Right.
It's what creates a sense of individuality and of one's own story. Jiki is not about conformity. It's very easy to interpret it as conformity and having this drum beat that we all march to.
Yeah.
For me, Jiki is complex and it has many different rhythms and melodies. It's like an orchestral piece. And we can play our part in a very improvised, very unusual way. And we can create a beautiful harmony with that, but we can also create a discordance that is interesting and exciting. And
creates change.
Absolutely. And the wonderful thing about music is that when we listen to music, a piece of music that we haven't heard before, we can predict where it's going,
right?
Because of the formula of music. And if the music does do that, we get a sense of real pleasure from it. It feels good when we are able to match that music without ever hearing it before. However, when it does something different that we weren't expecting, it surprises us. And that can be equally as pleasurable. In as much as the unexpected nature of it helps us to see things differently.
Yes.
And that can actually be quite euphoric in that unexpectedness. And this, to me, is at the very heart of Jiki and the nature of Jiki. It can create a sense of pleasure through expectation and fulfillment, or it can disarm us with the unexpected, and that can be equally pleasurable, even euphoric.
Absolutely. I was just thinking in my head, I love to watch people dance because I think people express themselves when they dance. When every step is placed, smoothly with the music, or they just have some really cool moves. I'm always admiring them, saying, wow, you know, that's so smooth. It's really visually appealing and enjoyable to watch. And then you get this other person that gets on the floor and they're like reckless abandon, you know, their arms are going, their beat isn't quite matching what the music is, but they likewise bring me joy as well, because I think, you know, you are just dancing to your own beat and you don't care. And that's wonderful. That's an expression of them and who they are. And I think of Jiki like that. You know, it's both sides equally valuable, equally beneficial, and it's the viewer, it's your perspective that actually makes it the joy, or you could actually just transform it to something not so pleasant.
Absolutely.
It's not what it's doing that's the effect, it's how you interpret it, what your perspective is.
Move and flow around it, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, it also depends on whether you're threatening them with the cattle prod or whether you're actually using the cattle prod. Has a very, very different dance style between the two.
Yeah.
I always wondered what that was doing back there. I've never seen you use it, but I
popped the visual in my head.
Don't make me use it.
Unfortunately, my family has heard me say, "Don't make me take out the cattle prod." You know.
See, it's truth.
It is true. It is true.
Well, you know, you've got to get your pleasure somewhere, haven't you? You know, watching people dance to the tune of your cattle prod is just one way of.
I'm not that mean, really.
No, not at all. You have salve.
Oh, goodness.
What I love about Jiki is, and the name, the key of magnetism, it is like magnets attracting and repelling.
Yes.
In as much as the relationships are coming together or moving apart.
Right.
And they themselves create dynamics within the world and within our physical experience. And what I love about Jiki is when you are practiced enough to read the dynamics, you can predict movement. So you can predict trajectory, for example.
Yeah. Or
you can predict speed of movement. And this is not just physical, moving within an environment, it's also emotional and psychological and spiritual. And Jiki has often created a fundamental aspect of one therapy, which is very psychic and psyche based in terms of psychic intelligence, because people, when they read the dynamics that are created by Jiki, do have this level of prophecy and prophetic experience where they can see what's going to happen ahead of it happening, just by looking at what is happening in terms of dynamic.
Right. And the fun part of this is that you can develop and increase your ability by working with the principles of Jiki. You know, it's something we all possess. Again, it's not something separate. It's part of who we are individually that can be developed, which is lots of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the sense of Shinki, the divine key, having this overarching plan of creating a physical universe with which it can experience itself and be the reflection of the physical world, to understand itself not as Shinki. And Jiki almost creates the music of that. And when we learn to interpret the dynamics of the music, we get an insight, perhaps our first real insight into Shinki and the divine, and this experience of more than or greater than ourselves. In the same way as a piece of music can bring us to a spiritual experience where we feel exhilarated and euphoric from listening to the music. When we work with Jiki, we begin to see the divine in the experience of it.
Right, which is infinite.
Absolutely. And those moments of elation are very present there in the dynamic reading of Jiki.
Yeah.
Jiki is now where we're in intelligence outweighing physicality.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes more intellectual in its experience and less physical. So whereas Denki has real physicality, Jiki is less physical.
Mm-hmm. But bringing balance between the two. Yeah.
It is in that sense of when we start to get more intelligent and the facet of Ki is more intelligent than it is physical, that's where we begin to experience the euphoria and the sense of enlightenment that comes with working with the facets of Ki.
Right, right. Constant opening of awareness.
Yes. Extraordinary in this is we have these couples that do provide different sides to each relationship. So from substance and form, expansion and limitation, through to the relationship between Denki and this internal physical experience. And there are these different dynamics that are like two sides to the coin in each question, but then also interrelating between those as well. So having more complex relationships between different layers of these facets. When we come to the next facet of Ki, which is the most well known, we have a single facet that exists, which is Reiki. And Reiki is the balancing force that balances all the other facets of Ki. So if we have a reliance on expansion more than definition or contraction, limitation, Reiki will be acting to balance those two forces out. So either working to less expansion or to more limitation or to both.
Right.
And there will be a reaction there where Reiki is working to balance that imbalance out.
Right, right. It's very interactive in that as it goes through that process, it actually allows for the other facets to present themselves perhaps in a way that was different than before, different in the awareness of the individual who's working with Reiki at the moment, whether that's you as a practitioner or the person receiving or self-treating. Reiki bridges the gap in ways that it's not an on-off, or it's not a, go this way, go that way kind of thing. It's a fullness of all, which is mind-blowing, because it isn't a magic wand. It is a very complex, intricate force of power that orchestrates it all.
Absolutely.
And brings it to you in a way that is always there, but it presents itself in a way that you either acknowledge it in your full awareness, or it just goes, you block it out. And that's why I was saying it brings the other facets, because it almost lifts the floodgates, so that the flow that is always there, you can acknowledge it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because very often Reiki is seen as the key of the soul. So in terms of how each key has its area of experience, the key of the soul is very much used for Reiki. However, for me, this is less the idea or concept of a human soul and more about the soul as in the essence of something. So when we think about the soul of a thing, it is that very core experience of that thing in terms of divine purpose and what that thing is there for. So the very essential part of that experience. And really Reiki is at the very core and the essential aspect of balance and harmony within the experience of the other facets of ki and how they create life. What I love about this is how Reiki becomes this bridge, high intellectual intelligence, low physicality in terms of the other facets of ki. But because of that, it has the ability to create this bridge between these two worlds, the world of the physical and the non-physical, the Shinki and the non-Shinki. And that bridge is what ensures that divine plan, that overarching strategy, is manifest or reflected in the physical world. And these two things exist exclusively. They don't actually exist mutually or in the same level of experience. They are mutually exclusive from each other. But Reiki creates this bridge of parallels where the left foot and the right foot can walk in unison as opposed to tripping each other up. There is a little twist when it comes to Reiki, however, because as we have these pairs in the facets of ki, we could also look at Reiki being a dual force or a coupling of two distinct facets of ki. One is focused into the physical world and one is focused into the non-physical world. And so when we work with Reiki, in terms of V-Reiki, Celtic Reiki, or One Therapy, we look at Reiki as being the experience of Tsuki, the key of the moon, or Ishiki, which is the key that faces into the experience of Shinki. And in that respect, Reiki has these two aspects, these two faces that can face inwards or outwards or both. And by aligning those two faces and ensuring that they exist within harmony and balance, we create this union between the physical and the non-physical. So if we were to look at Tsuki, key of the moon, here is this sense of higher consciousness and sort of the ability to be aware of what is happening in the world, almost sort of on a meta level, if you like, where we have this sense of actually being able to observe the world around us, what's going on, and to be able to work to that or against it where it needs it, but to create something beautiful out of the sometimes seemingly chaotic mess that is life. And it's Suki that really is that balancing act, and balancing in terms of human intelligence and human knowing. So Suki takes us from the awareness of the dynamics of Jiki and takes us to a level of the most profound human experience in terms of conscious experience.
Right. It's not constant enlightenment, but it is the act of you experiencing that moment enlightened to the big picture.
Absolutely.
What's really important, or what are the values, what are the true values of a particular situation, condition, world situation, whatever it may be. It's a pure form of understanding.
Absolutely. And I love the analogy with the key of the moon, which is like a moonlit path, where sometimes when the moon is full and it's bright and we can see the path quite clearly, it's not daylight, it's not sort of like a perfectly crystal clear understanding of every detail, color and nuance. It is that mysterious path, and it remains mysterious, but we can see and find our way. However, when it's a new moon and the sky is dark, the path becomes harder to see.
Everything's in the shadows.
Everything's in the shadows. And so that waxing and waning of the key of the moon, Tsuki, is very, very powerful when we will come to understand this thing of we cannot know all things all the time, that it is a waxing and waning, and it is cycles and how we work with cycles. So it's taking the dynamics created by Jiki and seeing the patterns, seeing the connections and relationships, seeing the cycles, and being able to live our lives in relation to those cycles.
Right.
So that we're not planting seeds at a time when we should be harvesting.
Right.
When it comes to Ishiki, surprisingly known as the key of consciousness, we're facing the other way. And this is the experience of consciousness within what we might call a meditative state. So when we begin to transcend a sense of self and move beyond the knowing of oneself, in that little space where we sit between hyper-consciousness and going into the non-physical, it's that point there where Ishiki lives. And this is the experience that is closest to the non-physical. And very often we can experience that, but when we come back into our physicality and into ourselves, it's very intangible and we can't really grasp it. So we might get a sense of what it was, or may bring back a metaphorical experience of it, but we can't really know it. In meditation, people talk about a point where you flip and you sort of flip out. So it's like for a moment, there's a blip where you just sort of lose yourself and
You're gone.
And you're gone.
Yes.
And it's in that moment where Ishiki lives,
Yes.
right on the very sort of cusp of human consciousness and awareness. To me, Ishiki is this aspect of Reiki that is in direct communication and bridges the gap between the physical and the non-physical.
Yes. Just talking about going, when you are in that deep core state and you just go. I just remember so many times coming back and immediately having to journal whatever I could, because it is gone. It's gone really quickly. And I encourage students, and I know you do as well, to journal. Even clients, journal your experiences, because there are moments when there are glimpses of something beyond what you have ever experienced that is so valid and important for what you might be going through right at the moment.
Yes.
Journaling is critical in creating that map.
Yeah, definitely. And because Ishiki has so little physicality, it literally is just like a speck
It
of
is.
physicality. It is pure intelligence, apart from this one little grain of sand there that just creates a slight anchoring into the physical experience. And that's what we're holding on to. We're holding on to a twinkle of light,
Yeah.
and that fades and diminishes over time, and not the largest amount of time either. So
Right.
when you see that twinkle of light, that sparkle of the divine, it's really important to bring that into the physical world, either through journaling and through writing, documenting that experience down, through artwork, through music, through poetry,
Yes.
through any form of creative endeavor. It's so important to bring that into the real world. And this is, we're moving into the area of seership and the Celtic Reiki seers, who are those who document spiritual experience and experience of Reiki through their artistry, painting, poetry, performance, music, sculpture, carpentry. They are taking that sight of the little glimmer and pulling it into the physical world, exploring it in the physical world and manifesting it into
It
something.
actually anchors it
Yes.
so that others can experience it regardless if they are aware of whatever journey you gleaned it from.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's so powerful. You can create based on your experience such powerful, it's almost like a catalyst. It causes a reaction, and people don't even know why they feel the way they do, but they like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting as well, because we can think of creativity in terms of artistry or performance. However, seeing that little glimmer, that sparkle of the divine, and then capturing it and bringing it into the physical world can be in the form of an experience or an environment, such as the realms. And this is where the realms have all come from, in terms of those little sparkles of dust that we experience. They are explored and turned into environments for people to also explore and to find their way around. And within each of those is all of that infinite wonder that exists within that single moment of sparkle.
Right. And it just keeps going from there, because when they experience that sparkle from our perspective, they interpret it based on their perspective, which
Absolutely.
changes it and evolves it and expands it, more than likely,
Yes.
to add another facet.
Definitely. We can talk in terms of very complex, vast realms that can take months, if not years, to actually just navigate for the first time.
Yeah.
And to go around once. That's without all of the revisiting and creating depth of experience within them, where you could spend years within one aspect of one realm.
Absolutely.
And create a sense of depth through your journaling, through your experience, through your artistry within that one section.
Yep.
But you can extrapolate that wonder and sense of awe into a physical, digital, virtual environment that people then can explore for themselves and create their own experiences within, and use it to reconnect to their own sparkles. So when they go over that bridge and they reach Ishiki, they too have those moments. And there are further sparkles that come into being, and those sparkles are anchored into the realms from those people.
Right.
But as we move forward, you could even talk about a trigger on a page of a book, which also does and serves that purpose. A single trigger on a single page actually holds an entire realm of sparkle. And that has been placed there with the experience of one person, and every time somebody triggers that anchor in the book or wherever that anchor may be,
Yep.
they go into that experience and they explore it for themselves, and it basically activates it for them, and then they find their own sparkles.
Right.
And I love this, the fact that we can actually create a vast environment that takes such an immense commitment to explore, or it can be something really innocuous, like a little image on a page that can hold just as much depth and breadth of experience within.
Right.
Then when you actually come to this point of Shinki and you reach this moment of the divine sparkle, where it's literally just a fraction of a moment's glimpse into a facsimile of the non-physical, of what exists beyond us, and bringing that glimpse back into something and making it real and tangible for ourselves and for others in the world, that we create this cascade back through. So immediately when we're working with Ishiki, we find ourselves moving into the experience of Reiki and into Tsuki and Jiki, and just sort of cascading back down.
Absolutely.
All the way to working on a fundamental physical, non-intelligent level with Keki and Shioke. And this helps us to basically restructure the physical world. We create a new physical world and a new sense of what the world is physically, actually, tangibly, through thought and idea. Some people look at a space and they see a spectacular skyscraper, and that then begins a process of creating the architecture and the planning and then the building. And it's not until that thought has been made manifest that this new shiny skyscraper exists, but that wouldn't be there without that initial inspiration, that spark.
Yeah.
We are doing the same thing in terms of the world. And when we look out into the world and we see all of the chaos and the unrest and all of the horrors and atrocities that go on in the world, it's the vision of that sparkle and seeing a better world for all that is real and tangible and physical. That's where it starts. It's in the sparkle, and we bring it down and we cascade it down one step at a time, one creation at a time, one treatment at a time, one student at a time,
Right.
one podcast at a time. We're literally bringing that sparkle into the physical world so that people can find their own sparkle and create their own physical world with it, and reflect that sparkle within the physicality around them and in their lives.
Absolutely.
We've looked at all the facets of Ki, and in terms of treatment, what have been your experiences in terms of actually working with the different facets in a treatment or a professional environment?
I'm very aware of my body. It's something that I think over time has gone from a dislike to a more nurturing, caring for perspective. You know, this is all about, from my perspective, this is a healing from trauma from childhood that has evolved into this process of embracing all of who I am. And I've always found it very fascinating to understand the workings of the meridian system. It is fascinating in knowing that these channels are impacted by dis-ease or blockages, or however you want to term it, and learning them, you know, especially in Reiki, I think I learned so much more in depth of what that really means. And that kind of springboarded me into associating that with chakras, different perspective, but still talking about the flow of energy. It's triggers, really. It's about, you know, you talked about that itch and how, you know, it makes you focus. It makes you think about, oh, you know, I'm itchy, and, you know, rather than let it get out of control, which I think is what happens to our brain when we start feeling that one itch, we start feeling itchy everywhere. I think from a facet of Ki perspective, when something triggers our attention, whether it be pain or an itch, quite frankly, I automatically now associate it to the meridians. So in self-treating, that's usually my first place to go to, is like, okay, what meridian is this impacting? What chakra is this impacting? Okay, let's dig a little deeper. And so we're going from understanding the facets to using them to help decipher what we are experiencing. I find it a lot easier to do that with clients, less easy on myself. But I also find that, you know, it requires a lot of time and thoughtfulness towards your client as well as to yourself to understand where and what facet of Ki they're actually interacting with, whether or not they're aware of it or not. So, you know, I love suboral treatments, you know, the sound treatments.
Yes.
I also love Mitsuki, the water and air, you know, those to be able to take those two facets and use them in a way to bring together and separate.
Yes.
In a fluid motion, introducing that space that an individual may need, that I may need to be able to take a step back and evaluate what really is going on. Those are really very, very powerful. I think some of my favorites to work with, Tsuki, I really love playing with to be honest with you, because it is the mysterious, it is the intuitive side of Ki, and it's fun to explore. Sometimes I will use that when someone is frightened about something, and I bring them to a point where they're on that path of Tsuki, where they're walking that path, and it might be dark, but the light that's shed may just be enough light for them to be able to say, oh, that's not what I thought it was.
Absolutely.
And so when the full moon comes and they see things in a much more enlightened way, they're able to say, okay, I know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
And even when the new moon comes and the darkness comes back, they have that recollection of, okay, I don't need to fear this the way I did before because it's now redefined.
You know, every facet has its own dynamic, its own action, its own force. But also when we talk in terms of the therapy that comes with that and how we can use therapeutic tools and techniques around these different facets, it is exceptionally powerful.
It is.
To sort of see how they function in the therapeutic environment. So you mentioned suboral and the suboral treatments there of Kuki and the idea of sound traveling through air from one thing to another, and how we can use this understanding of sonics within the Kuki experience to create a vast array of treatments. And I love Kuki treatments too. I think they're just amazing.
It just takes you. Talk about being taken when you're gone.
Yeah.
Every client that I've worked with suboral treatments have gone.
Yeah.
They got, I mean, and it's wonderful because you experience it as well because you're interconnected.
Absolutely.
It is not me doing something to them. It is us on a journey together.
So I think I've finished my drama banana. I'm feeling much better now.
A little more balanced, are we? Good.
I've
I'm happy to see that.
fallen down and got back up again. How were your burrs second time round?
It's actually, I'm getting accustomed to it. You know, they were a little shocking at first, but this rock dissolving action is pretty cool. I don't know what it's doing to the insides of me, but
yes.
I'll find out.
You've got a couple of burrs stuck in your hair there, I think.
Ah, that is the worst. That is not a good thing ever.
Do you find that they comb out, or do you just have to chop? Like bubble gum, where you just have to chop the lot out?
Oh, bubble gum is even worse. No, I actually have to use coconut oil.
Oh, I love coconut oil. In fact, I love anything coconut. Ooh. I wonder if they do coconut tipples.
I'm sure they do. I
shall bear that in mind for next time. Is coconut a droop?
Could be.
Well, I think it's time to go back onto our travels. We've been here with what feels like a week. So,
I know. I know.
It's time to head out back into the unknown.
Or the known, revisiting in a different perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Cycles.
Absolutely. I like re-exploring.
I did hear that there were some ghost tours going on. I might go and investigate.
You know, I heard the same thing. Actually, that's posted on the bulletin board as we walked in, and I believe it's a guided tour of a few places. So yeah, I'm ready. You going? Because I'm going.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Oh my goodness, I can't wait. Well, it's been amazing fun.
Absolutely. And
lots more to come.
Yes, a lot more. And until we meet again.
As always, be enchanted. Be enchanted.
It's so hard for me to say normal now. I can't. It just doesn't want to come out. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Even when I write it, like I had magical and enchanted. I couldn't say it. So from now on, when you hear me say magical, what I really want to say is that other word.
Everything we explore in It's Reiki, but Not As You Know It is designed for people who want to tackle the real challenges of life and seize its opportunities in powerful, grounded and magical ways, embracing their responsibility and compassion. If you want to use the powerful tools of One Therapy to support other people in their change journey, then the One Therapy Practitioner Programme is the way to go. Starting shortly, this unique programme immerses you in the personal value of One Therapy, guides you as you reflect on these experiences, then equips you with professional resources and practical business strategy that put your practice on solid foundations. Simply point your mouse at www.one-therapy.com and click to visit the practitioner training section and find out much more.